If this is the first episode that you're seeing, just a heads up, this is part two of a three-part series where I'm exploring wisdom as a part of laying the foundation for this project. I believe that to know wisdom is to see it as separate from knowledge and understanding, yet still informed by their touch. Understanding this concept will be crucial to constructive communication throughout this project. If you're continuing from part one, welcome back. And just to make my conclusion crystal clear, I believe that wisdom truly begins when we subject ourselves to recognize the basic imperfection of knowledge.
Knowledge is the information and the experience of the information without going through a process of being able to apply that information across different scenarios. So if something happens, you may know something, but then because you haven't experienced it in a while, you
It
forget.
doesn't matter what you know or even how much. If we can't find meaning and justification in our experiences, then we'll end up rejecting or forgetting them. For me, the experience that catalyzed my growth journey or my journey to wisdom was the first time that I ever felt that I'd encountered God. For me, this was impossible to forget, so I began to seek all of the information I could, and I was running myself dizzy trying to make sense of it all. Today is the second day that I've been reading my Bible and just really kind of diving into the Lord and trying to understand the way that He works. I want to get a deeper understanding for Him and the world. I want wisdom. I want to be able to navigate the world the way that I want to navigate it and not off of a what if. I mean, with what I have, God telling me that it's going to be okay, letting me know that I'm on the right track and I'm in the right place and everything's going to work out just the way that it is supposed to. Does that mean that I relax? I may be confined to this room all summer. Just me and this Bible. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be. I don't know. I had an experience that I was incapable of coming to terms with because everything that I knew or thought that I knew now served insufficient to comprehend it. Prior to that day, all I knew was that Christianity and knowing God meant that I had to be rid of worldly desires and obeying commandments. And as will be revealed, I knew I wasn't rid of those desires, nor was I obeying any commandments, at least not intentionally. In fact, following that experience, I immediately struggled with self consciousness and I was concerned about one specific thing that I hinted at in part one. So, my biggest thing that I'm struggling with is weed. Like, I don't know if it's this God forbidden thing that just I should avoid at all costs. I had been living in ignorant bliss when it came to fulfillment and religion. And honestly, I thought that apparently I must have been doing something right if God chose to reveal Himself to me. So I couldn't understand whether I should do a complete 180 or just slowly begin to adjust with the new information I was receiving and trust that it really was all going to be okay. Do I want to let it go, or do I just need to understand better, understand myself, and understand my relationship with God better before I do that? Like, before I let it go, I guess. I wanted so desperately to understand what was the right thing or the wise thing to do.
I look at wisdom like the processor. So knowledge is the information that goes into the processor, which is wisdom, and that's what actually filters it to get you to a point of understanding, right? And understanding is like the finished product. once you understand something, you can take it to the more levels. You can begin to see the thing that you understand in other things. Anatomy, right? Let's say you understand anatomy. Now you understand how the heart works and all this kind of stuff. You could take that information, that understanding, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a human. You could actually go to a dog, and you have some level of understanding because you can transfer this information over to here. I know what I'm looking at because I have a certain level of, I have a higher level of understanding.
What do you make of the phrase to be wise in your understanding?
To be wise in your understanding, um, like I said, wisdom is the processor. So if we have a level of understanding of something, you have to know your limitations, even in what you understand. Because if you're not wise enough to know your limitations, then you're going to take yourself too far. 'Cause a lot of people do that, right?
The most important limitation to acknowledge is the limitation of knowledge. I was so eager to understand my own experience that I wanted to learn and apply everything effectively all at once. But the more I learned about spiritual principles, the more difficult that became because those principles told me that it was impossible to know God if I did not obey them. Yet, I hadn't obeyed them, at least not intentionally, and I knew very well who I'd encountered. I became so focused on these principles that they carried more weight than they probably deserved. But that's where I am right now, honestly. I really don't know. It's so confusing to me. And why is it such a big deal? How do you personally define sin? And why do you think it holds so much significance in our moral and spiritual lives?
So the first commandment was to love the Lord thy God with all your heart.
Hmm.
And the second one was love your brother, right? To follow peace with your brother. So to me, God's most concerned with how we treat each other. We're saved by grace through faith, not by works, right? So when we start talking about sin, to me, sin is anything that takes you further away from God, not your conscience, because I can teach you some things and need you to believe something, and you walk around thinking this is sin, and you feel guilty because you're doing it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a sin. It's just because I've convinced you that this is wrong. I think that also there are different times that you should restrain from different things. But again, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. So now we get into the trying to figure out what you can versus can't do. And I think at that point, it becomes a political kind of thing where a lot of opinions get put in there. So I think that it's a slippery slope when we try to interpret sin. I feel like, how do you know when you're sinning? When you feel the grief of what you're doing and you can't function properly. So it may not be a sin, but is you might need to get a deeper understanding of why I'm feeling this way. So now you take this thing back to God and say, okay, God, I need a deeper understanding of this thing because I don't like how I feel when I'm doing this or when I did this. So help me understand, is this you, or is this me, or is this, my upbringing, what is this? Help me understand this. So I think that it's a constant process. I don't think that man is it's a man's responsibility to tell you what is a sin for you, right? That now again, there are some basics because he wants us to follow peace with each other. So now if I'm stealing from you, I'm sinning. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm doing something wrong to you. But as it expands beyond that, it gets kind of gray.
I was in that gray area. If you saw episode 1 of this project, you'll remember I talked about experiencing let's just call them contrary emotions on the day of my divine encounter. I wasn't sure if those conflicting feelings were coming from my own inner struggles or from unseen forces or from God Himself. And because I didn't know the source, I didn't know how to categorize my habit in light of the principles and the doctrine. If it's myself, though, there's just growth that I need to do because it's not something that I dislike doing, especially at first. I didn't feel the way I feel now. Can I be a devout Christian and still do this? Or is it just not okay? Like, is that not, when I say I just want him to tell me what to do. I wish it was that easy. All I know is that God told me it's gonna be okay. He told me yesterday that it's gonna be okay. And I don't even know what that means. How okay is it gonna be? When is it gonna be okay? So, what about the commandments that say, do not commit adultery, don't steal, love God with all your heart, don't have sex outside of marriage? Because those are some big ones. Is it telling us what is a sin, or is it advising us not to offend our brothers and sisters?
So my interpretation of the commandments, well, let's not even say interpretation. The Ten Commandments were given to the children of Israel. The children of Israel were not in the world. They were in the wilderness. So they were isolated. That was an isolated community. We're not in that community. The body of Christ is living within the world at this point. So you have your own cultural ideals, but then there are also laws of the Roman Empire. So when you think about, like you brought up sex before marriage, well, if we're going to ask the question, what's the issue with sex before marriage? We have to go back a little bit to figure out what is marriage. We have a national standard for America of what marriage is, but this is a moral conversation or a godly conversation. What does God consider to be marriage? Which law are we going by? There's three parts to what God considers marriage: leave, cleave, become one flesh. There was no paperwork when God was communicating these things, right? We have a standard here in the United States that says you have to sign some papers, some documentation. That documentation that you're signing for the United States has nothing to do with leaving, cleaving, and becoming one flesh. That's a business contract that says here's how you split up assets, here's how you can share benefits, and here's how you can do this. So beneficiary stuff, and that's a traditional thing. If we're taking your emotions out, taking your feelings out, when it comes to the morality of marriage, it's a biblical process, right? Because the American government just says you can't have more than one wife. It doesn't say you can't have more than one sex partner. They don't care about that. That's a God law.
God Himself told me that it's going to be okay. So, I mean, is this where I let go of the reins a little bit? Maybe I don't have to fight to understand. Maybe I just let things play out the way that they will. It's funny how things start to make sense the moment you admit that you have no idea what to do. By accepting my limited knowledge and holding on to the only thing that I knew for sure, I grew more confident in interpreting doctrines and principles even if they didn't make sense at first, because I knew that in some way they must affirm that everything was going to be okay. And with that uncertainty, I found joy in appealing directly to the source. I didn't waste too much time on pages that will turn, or words that will fade, or humans who are fickle. But I placed the most concern on trying to understand and maintain the unlimited and unchanging power of peace. Because true understanding isn't always knowing left from right. It's learning to rest with what you don't and to keep moving forward regardless. And that concludes part 2. I may not have had everything all right at the time, but I trusted that it was going to be all right, and I allowed the process to ensue. Maybe we'll pray again. I'm going to say a prayer. I don't think I need to film this.